system. Okay. All right, so for the purposes of C 2 through 5, motion by Ms. Malin, seconded by Dr. Griffin. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. Thank you very much. Put them down. Seeing all hands raised. Motion C 2 through 5 is approved unanimously. Next we have for the board consent agenda is item number 6, which is the vote to replace Ms. Regina Hunt, who had to step down from her position as vice president. So there is a vacancy in the vice president spot on the board, and now is the time for nominations for the vice president. Are there any nominations for vice president? Dr. Griffin?
I would like to nominate Mr. Nix.
Thank you. Mr. Nix's name has been placed into nomination.
I'll second that nomination.
Is there a second? There is a second by Mr. Pacini. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Seeing no nominations, you have before you Mr. Nix for the position of Board of Education Vice President. Are you ready for the vote, or is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Put them down. Seeing all hands raised, the motion is passed unanimously. Congratulations, Mr. Nix.
I have to do that, right?
Okay, so we're going to administer the oath of office. So you're just going to repeat it for me. Please raise your right hand. I state,
I, Jack Nix,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of Board of Education Vice President
of Board of Education Vice President
of the South Country Central School District
of the South Country Central School District
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Griffin.
Congratulations.
Go ahead, take your victory walk.
Okay, great.
Go ahead.
Dr. Griffin, all along.
I am. I promise I shall.
There's nothing to say.
Nothing I said.
Thank you. Now I got the fancy chair.
Now you get the chance.
Best part of the whole job.
Yeah. One more support.
All right. Communications and announcements, the superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you. Last night I had the absolute honor and privilege to attend Bellport High School's Evening of Excellence along with President of Police. Those of you that don't know, the Evening of Excellence is a wonderful event where we recognize our distinguished seniors, who are those with a GPA of 92 or greater, 51 of them this year. And they, in turn, recognize a teacher from each of our schools that have most influenced their learning during their career here at South Country. The night started off with a presentation of colors by our own Cadet Corps students and our Kramer Street Kindergarten singing America the Beautiful, and they were absolutely fabulous, Mr. Clark, so just so you do know that. I know you were there. Our 51 distinguished seniors, honor teachers, and guests dined on the fine cuisine created by our own culinary students under the guidance of Mrs. Mason and Mrs. Melandro. The honored teachers included Mrs. Brenda Tejeda from Brookhaven, Ms. Jennifer Reynolds from Kramer Street, and Mr. William Pettit from Pritz, Mrs. Mary Pettit from Frank P. Long, and I did see both of them in the audience this evening, so there they are. Mr. Salvatore De Pluma from Bellport Middle School, and Mrs. Wendy Palladino from Bellport High School. Simply a fabulous event put together by the high school administrative team, led by Mr. Latore last night, which is fabulous. Next item, in response to a community member's inquiry at our March 13th Board of Education meeting, the balance of our 2016 capital reserve is $2.3 million, not $20 million. the board will recall the capital reserve fund was authorized for an amount not to exceed 10 million with the probable term of 8 years. The 10 million is cumulative and may not exceed that authorized limit. Not sure how the $20 million mark came up. However, in any event, the suggested equipment purchase could not be funded through the capital reserve because it is simply not capital work. However, we do currently have air purification systems in each of our classrooms at Frank P. Long, and those systems are equipped with a BOC sensor. And that is all the announcements that I have.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Delalosa.
I just have a few things I want to mention. Class Olympics is this Friday at the high school. It's a fun way for all the classes to get together, and I know everyone's looking forward for it. It's March 29th at 6 p.m. I also wanted to mention that Student Council will be donating a basket for the Courtney Pabst Chinese auction fundraiser. For many of those who know, Courtney unfortunately had to get her leg amputated due to a complication in her ACL surgery. And she's a former Belport student and also a former student council member. So StudCo will be donating a basket at this fundraiser, and I know that the junior class and the senior class also plan on donating a basket, and I think that it's a really great cause for them.
When is the fundraiser?
April
again?
7th.
Yes, thank you. At
You know if it's
Baker's.
sold out yet?
That's Sunday.
I'm pretty sure it's sold close
I
to it.
know that my mom bought a ticket recently. I think some people might still be selling them, but
So
I
for anybody
know.
who is interested in going, you gotta find a community member that's selling them. I know the people that I know have sold theirs out, whether or not the event sold
Yeah.
out, I don't know. But I know I bought my tickets a month ago, so,
yeah.
and they've only had a few left.
And I also wanted to thank the Belport High School Guidance Department for nominating me for the George Washington Award. I found out today, actually, that I am a recipient, and I made it through the round, so I was very grateful. The award recognizes students who have leadership qualities and showed service in their schools and academic excellence. So I just wanted to thank Mr. Jarman and Mrs. Burke for nominating me. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. Mr. Santa?
I have to catch my breath. I'm so happy. To piggyback off of what Dr. Gianni said about last evening, I've always immensely enjoyed the Evening of Excellence, and last evening was, I'm going to say, the beginning of my crying season. My baby is going to be graduating high school, much to her chagrin. I just said baby, and I know we're live on YouTube. And as I looked around the room last evening, I have such fond personal memories of way back in the day as a PTA mom at Vern Kritz and a class mom at Vern Kritz, and watching these wonderful young people. And they were wonderful from when they were in kindergarten, and I've watched them grow. And then when they graduated Kritz and they went to Frank P. Long, and then all of a sudden there was a whole nother group of wonderful young people who were often in my basement, quite frankly, and my backyard. And then to see them grow, and yesterday, through the middle school, when, we moms aren't really cool and we're not so much allowed in the middle school, but I was always serving food at the dance. And then in the high school now, with my last baby being a senior, we're really not allowed anywhere, but we're in the kitchen during homecoming, putting in the appetizers, and every once in a while we have to carry the trays down, so we peek in as we dance there. And to watch these wonderful young people just develop into beautiful, just amazing young women and young men. And you know what? In so many places, numbers are important, but let me tell you, it's not the numbers, it's not the ranking, it's not the averages. They are amazingly kind and compassionate human beings, and that's got to be the takeaway. So like I said, it's the beginning of my crying season. I was crying last night. I'm trying not to cry now. I'll be crying from now until graduation day. So thank you for letting me indulge that, and I can't begin to tell you how proud I am and how I am looking forward to of course, hand the diploma to my daughter, but I have quite a few wonderful young people who are going to honor me in letting me hand their diploma to them on graduation day. And as I was saying, I'm gonna be a hot mess that day, but it's okay, I'll have my sunglasses on. So thank you for the opportunity of sharing that. And on to some other wonderful news at Bellport High School. Variety show is coming up. As I always tell everyone, the absolute best ticket in the world is a ticket to one of the shows that we have here in South Country. You will never be disappointed. So the variety show is coming up. It's Friday and Saturday evening. That is April. I'm just blanking on the dates. I got so excited. Help me out. Oh, wait, give me a second. I left my calendar in the car, so I'm gonna have to do technology here. Give me a moment. The 12th and 13th, there we go. I got so excited about the other thing. So Friday, April 12th, and Saturday, April 13th at the high school at 7:30. Variety show. And this year's theme is the 90s. So please come and enjoy, and for some people in the audience, you can relive your youth. I know I will be. And it really is a fabulous show. So I do hope that we'll see many people there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Allen, Ms. Puccini.
I might have to ask for some time a little bit later. The Newsday is announcing the Old Long Island Winter Sports Awards right now.
Oh,
And I fully expect
All right. So
one
when
of
you're
our
finished-
players, at least on the basketball team, to be Suffolk Player of the Year, but I want to wait for the official announcement. So maybe I'll have something for you in a little bit.
You give us the high sign when
Will
you
do.
do. All right.
Nothing for me.
All right, Mr. Nick.
I just want to say thank you to Dr. Griffin and Trustee Piccini and all of my trustees for this new opportunity to serve as Vice President. I really look forward to working in this new capacity with President Felice to continue making our district the best it can be.
Okay.
And I want to give a shout out to my predecessor, Regina Hunt, who is such a mentor to me, so this is very exciting. Thank you.
I know you'll do us all proud.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and I'll just echo the comments that Dr. Gianni made about last night. It was a wonderful event. I was especially taken that Mrs. Palladino chose to speak about the fact that she's also a Bellport grad. So having been nominated and honored in that way by her students, having also been a student of this great district, was a nice finishing touch. But everyone made it just a great event. Mr. Hogan's not here tonight to receive his accolades. It was truly a wonderful event. So thank you to the high school for inviting us, and I hope we continue more in the future. I didn't realize last night that it's only the second annual,
Yes.
and such a wonderful event. So something that I hope is a new tradition that will continue long into the future. So hats off to you too.
Yeah, we'll be able to have our pre-K students sing.
Oh, that would be fun.
Very
That would be fun. All right. Okay, next that brings us up to guide to board meetings. Do we have any cards? No cards, okay. So we'll dispense with reading the guides to the board meetings until the end. And that brings us up to our presentation.
Okay, thank you. Our first item for discussion is a presentation titled Showing What You've Learned, Teaching for Transfer. Making the presentation this evening is our Director of Elementary Education along with our literacy coaches. Ms. Amy Brennan, I'm going to ask her to come up and she could make the intros.
Thank you, Dr. Gianni.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank, along with Dr. Gianni, the members of the Board of Education for giving us this opportunity to present to you tonight some of the work that's going on in our classrooms. You'll see tonight examples where our literacy coaches, our teachers, and our students are working in this current unit of study, showing all you've learned, teaching for transfer. I'm excited to be here with the literacy coaches. Kim Goslin is here from Brookhaven Elementary School, Carrie Paolillo from Frankie Long, Vicki Williams from Kramer Street, and Jen Hayhurst from Vernon Elementary School. Tonight you'll see some insight into this current unit of study that I mentioned, and you'll notice a common thread throughout the presentation. We'll be talking about the Board of Education priorities, and we'll also be sharing with you the collaboration and the learning that's going on in our classrooms. And to get us started, Kim's going to start by sharing South Country's approach to balanced literacy.
Good evening. So South Country Central School District adopted a balanced literacy framework back in September of 2012. The framework is based on the gradual release model, and it's comprised of 3 main components of literacy, which include reading, writing, and word study. And oral language is a key component that's embedded throughout those components as well. In each of the 3 components, there are methods of teaching with a variety of levels of support that's provided to the students. For example, in reading, the read aloud has the highest level of teacher support, where the teacher models their thinking and their reading behaviors in authentic and on or above level texts, which provides access and exposure to all students in the classroom. In shared reading, it's also very much teacher-led, and the teacher and students interact with either a text that is either on or 1 or 2 levels above the student's current reading level, and then the teacher provides a brief introduction, helps the students preview the text prior to reading, and really sets them up then to do some choral reading with themselves and with the teacher and the students do some choral reading together. After that reading, there is a book discussion. The next level of support is guided reading. In guided reading, it's a form of our small group instruction in which the students are interacting with their instructional level texts. So here, the teacher provides a scaffolded introduction and then coaches the students as they begin reading independently. Providing students with a variety of these methods throughout the week leads to and supports the student independence that we hope to foster in our classrooms.
So this slide shows how the current unit of study connects to the previous units of study in our reading and writing curriculum. The current unit reviews what students have already learned and invites them to apply those skills. This is why the unit is called Showing All You Know, Teaching for Transfer. In 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, the students begin the year studying characters and reading. They learn about character traits, how characters change, and they form interpretations about themes based on what the characters learn. The prior units in reading also address how to read nonfiction texts, especially as they become more difficult. There is an emphasis on main idea and multiple main ideas as we move up the grade levels. This continues to be an emphasis in our current unit. In 5th grade, students shift into argument reading, which is the precursor for the work that they do in secondary education. In writing, the students' prior units include writing opinion and literary essays. They focus on essay structure and using evidence from text, which is also heavily addressed in this current unit. The current unit is a review and application of important skills that are directly linked to the grade level learning standards.
So as Mrs. Brennan had mentioned, that we're going to be connecting the presentations of Board of Ed priorities to the work that's being done in reading and writing instruction. So priority 1 reminds us of the dedication to the teaching and learning through the lens of the New York State learning standards and the expectation that we bring all students to grade level. So this is what it looks like in the current unit in grades 3 through 5 during Reader's Workshop. The framework illustrates the gradual release of responsibility throughout the week. The method allows the teachers to scaffold grade level work while building independence across the week. So day 1 begins with a shared experience. So this is when the teacher exposed the students to thinking around the text. It's an interactive shared reading type experience, and the teacher teaches the genre of the week using the charts and tools that will guide the conversations around the meaning of the text. Days 2 and day 3 are traditional, more like the Reader's Workshop structure. This happens every day throughout the year. And that begins with a mini lesson where the teacher gives a specific teaching point, models it, and then has the students give it a try. The mini lessons were chosen from a menu of options within the unit that teachers were able to choose which mini lesson best meets the needs of their class. Day 4 is small group center day, and this allows more differentiation, allowing teachers to use flexible grouping so that students can get targeted instruction. When students are not in a teacher-led group, they're working with their peers in collaborative centers, reinforcing their literacy skills. And then day 5, which is reading marathon, highlights the importance of independent reading, giving students time to read independently the books of their choice. Through all the grades in Reader's Workshop, K through 5, every day, there's time that we work on building stamina and volume of reading. So day 5 emphasizes the importance of that work, showing that readers need time in order to practice their reading skills. The teachers then at this time provide feedback and reinforcement. The next slide will show what writing looks like. This is typically what it looks like every day, every grade throughout all the units. So a workshop period has time for mini lesson, then time for practice where teachers pull small groups or confer, and then there's a share at the end of the lesson. So the example that's on the slide comes from the current unit. It's a 3rd grade lesson in which the teachers are leading the students on how to plan and draft both orally before doing their writing. And then once the teacher sends them off to practice, then the teacher will confer, they meet in small group, and then they come back at the end and they reflect in partnerships ways that they use evidence in their writing. This slide shows the writing in action. So in these slides, again, these are from 3rd grade classrooms. The students are using the tools that we previously mentioned, their checklist, using them against their writing, working in partnership, giving each other feedback.
The next few slides show just a snapshot of some of the teaching points across the units for the 3 grade levels. These are just some of the important skills that the students work on throughout the unit. For example, in 3rd grade, we see students learning to figure out main idea by tracking what repeats in the text and asking why that information is important. An example in 4th grade shows the students self-assessing their writing. And in 5th grade, we see students thinking about characters' point of view. The next few slides address how we are looking at information from formative classroom assessments. Some assessments we use throughout the year are the Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessments, the NWEA, and the formative mid-year assessment. We use these to plan differentiated instruction with students in alignment with the New York State learning standards.
Improving student learning requires us to not only implement the learning standards, but to also address the differences in our different student subgroups in achievement. In order to do that, in order to identify the standards, what we did is we created some formative assessments in district. We began the process with our K through 5 reading standards. They started first by reviewing the New York State learning standards. Then what we did is we looked at any available rubrics that would address the writing responses, which is response to reading. And we chose rubrics to use that reflected what we expected students to know and be able to do by the end of their particular grade level. We located passages. That's meant that where the reading teachers took some time, they were looking through passages that were at the range of reading levels for each grade level. We took into consideration that it was mid-year, not the end of the year benchmarks. And then we developed questions. And we developed questions that were aligned to New York State learning standards. After each team reviewed each grade level, they switched the papers and reviewed them across each team. So there were multiple reviews at that first process. Following the reading teachers process, we moved it up to grade level teacher representatives. And at this point, teachers from each building came together and they reviewed the second draft of the assessment. They suggested edits and revisions, and some of them were looked at along with the standards and made. Representatives then were sharing back at their buildings with their colleagues for further review. Then we had building reviews. The assessments went back to the building principals and assistant principals, and they reviewed their respective grade levels. Teachers at grade levels reviewed the drafts and again suggested any edits and revisions. And then the feedback was reviewed before we put the final draft out. Suggestions for those edits and revisions were reviewed again against New York State learning standards. The passages were reviewed again, and any edits were done in that final draft. Following the administration of the exams from 3 through 5, we also reviewed the questions and passages again. We looked at the data, we looked at how students performed, and in order to improve the data for the next testing period next year. On the district website, you'll find the question and answer document, which I have just linked up here. And in this, anyone in the community can go in and look at any questions or answers that they might have related to the formative assessments.
So once the test was administered, we got to analyzing the data to look for trends district-wide. So one trend that we found amongst the 3 elementary buildings in 3rd grade was that standard RI 3.2 determined the main idea of the text, recount the key details, and explain how they support the main idea, was an area that needed additional attention throughout. It was also noticed that across grades 3 through 5, one of the standards that stood out was developing the central message or theme as an area of focus. So after analyzing the data, we then asked the question, how could we use this information to help support student learning? During this process, there were many layers of support in incorporating our findings into our daily practice. At the district level, reports were generated and the results were shared and discussed amongst administrators and building leaders. And then at the building levels, administrators then shared those results out with their staff. The buildings also scheduled data meetings to allow both the administrators, the coaches, and the teachers to review and discuss the reports and how we could best use them to promote student performance and learning. With these reports, teachers were able to identify the skill gaps at both the class and student levels, which then led to our next steps for instruction. In addition, the district also provided after-school professional development to the grade levels, allowing them more time to look at the data and, more importantly, discuss how that information would be addressed during our current unit of study. During this after-school PD, the grade levels met with the literacy coaches, ourselves, and we focused on both group and individual student needs. We aligned these assessments with the tools provided to us in the current unit of study to plan our instruction. So for example, there were opportunities to take the reports of the findings, which outlined the groups of students who needed additional support in specific standards as per the formative assessment, and then we aligned that to one of these kinds of documents, which is from our current unit of study, which is called the If-Then Small Group Menu that comes directly from the unit. So if you take a look, one of our findings that we might have found for the formative assessment was that students were having difficulty tackling higher level texts. And so this tool from our unit of study says if students are struggling reading aloud higher level text, then here are the steps that you need to take for small group instruction. And teachers were allowed to really fine tune their small groups for that day 4 instruction as outlined before in the unit of study. Oops, sorry. In addition, lastly, we also looked and analyzed the student writing that was done in these formative assessments, and then we were able to put that against the rubrics that the unit provided us to think about what the students were currently doing and then what their next steps could be. And this is really helpful for teachers in deciding which mini lessons best meted the needs of their students. As Vicki explained before, there's a menu of mini lessons in the unit that we were able to choose from. And then we were also able to create small groups for our writing instruction.
All right. So, the next few slides are going to speak to Board of Ed priority number 3. And through the units of study, we are working to create culturally responsible classrooms that embrace and reflect all of our children. Our work is very intentional. To meet children where they are and give them access to a well-rounded educational experience, to meet their social and emotional needs, to ensure equity so that all children receive what they need to be successful. Our teaching is designed to offer choice. Children are exposed to a dynamic variety of text types. The books that you see up on the screen are all mentor texts that are referenced throughout the current units of study. Teachers call these books mentor texts because they are books that we can return to again and again throughout the school year for a sundry of reasons. They are books that teach. Books that not only tell compelling stories or relay fascinating facts, they allow children to see themselves and their stories and their interests within them. And that is very powerful. So if you walk into any elementary classroom at South Country, you will see these charts hanging on the walls. These charts are not decorative. They are very, very important tools for learning. They are called anchor charts, and they are used throughout the year. Some experts will refer to them as the second teacher in the room. They do that because children are learning what they need to know, how they can access the help that they need, so that they can just refer to these anchor charts and get that information and do it on their own. When children do this, this is a very, very, very big step towards greater independence and student agency. And this last slide is going to start with a quote. In the book Choice Words, Peter Johnston writes, "The language that teachers and their students use in the classroom is a big deal." Such a simple quote with such an important message. We embrace language learning in all its forms as we continue to strive to develop greater sophistication and ease with self-expression. Language helps children form their identities and grants them freedom and access to high levels of thinking. Every day in the units of study, children are participating in these rich collaborative discussions with their teachers and with their peers in partnerships and small groups. This is so they may be more responsive to the text that they are reading and be able to share the perspectives that they are putting forth in their own writing.
So priority number 4 is dedicated to creating high-quality professional development, matching the content to curriculum, while also building capacity among the professionals. So here is a list of all the different offerings that we have for this current school year. As Kim had mentioned earlier, we did begin the work of balanced literacy in 2012, and the literacy coaches have offered support and professional development throughout the years. However, this year we have added layers that have really helped increase capacity. So the staff development days, that is when a teacher's college staff developer comes into each building, and they work alongside the teachers and they work with the students. Conference days are when they're at Teachers College and teachers sign up and they go to them. It's a one-day offering, and they're around a very specific topic relating to literacy instruction. The lead teacher meeting, each building in the district has a lead teacher who's part of this group. They have their own staff developer, and they work with other Long Island schools. Actually, a little buzz here, on Friday, Brookhaven will be hosting the K-2 group, and we're really excited about that. So other districts will be coming, will be there, and the K-2 teachers will be meeting there. The mini institutes, summer institutes, and coaching institutes, those are multi-day. They are also at Teachers College. They go a little bit deeper into the content, and the after-school PD is really what happens here. And many of the things I mentioned above, teachers who go to those other things, they come back and they share and turnkey to their peers. So it's not just the literacy coaches who offer the after-school PDs, EL teachers, general education teachers, special education teachers. For this particular unit, the literacy coaches and 2 reading teachers did go to Teachers College during February. And we came back and we prepared the materials, the resources for the teacher. We facilitated professional development both during the day and after school, leaning into how to differentiate the unit to best meet the needs of the students. So these next few slides are our professional development. So these were at Brookhaven for the district-wide 3rd grade with our staff developer. These were in the units of the opinion and literary writing essays. And what happens in these PDs is that the staff developer starts with the teachers in like a pre-meeting, and then she'll go in and demonstrate something, and then the teachers have a chance to usually try it right away, and then we come back and debrief. So this is the teachers trying, the coaches in the background, and giving feedback.
So
these next few slides are going to show a little glimpse into our current unit of study and how students are engaging in the learning process there. So here we see students engaging in both group and partner work in our current unit of study. You'll see students that are reading, thinking, and responding to text, and also developing their speaking and listening skills around the different texts that they're reading. Another big component, as mentioned on day 4, are the literacy centers. The current unit of study offers a variety of centers that are differentiated depending on skills. So once again, using our formative data, the teachers were able to choose from that menu to determine which centers would be best appropriate for their classroom. In these pictures, you see students engaging in one of the centers called Apples to Apples. There's also Jeopardy. They have main ideas centers, cause and effect. So it's very fun and engaging for the students throughout the learning process. Here's some more pictures of that Apples to Apples game. And once again, just to highlight, the centers could either be teacher-led or student-led or independent.
So thank you, Kim, Carrie, Vicki, and Jen. I hope we were able to see some really nice live examples in our classrooms where we're bringing together the Board of Education priorities along with standards, instruction, curriculum, and assessment. And so one of the questions that we ask ourselves when we're thinking about curriculum and instruction is how do these 4 components work together? The standards, the curriculum, the instruction, and the assessment piece. So hopefully we're able to show you how we bring those 4 components together while letting the Board of Ed priorities be our guide. You'll see in this next video a really great example of a class where they are showing all that they have learned in this unit of study, and actually through the whole year. So I'd like to just thank Mary Pettit from Frank P. Long and her 5th grade class for sharing all that they've learned with us tonight.
I was really amazed by how I received on this one because I actually had a good structure and everything was really good and I stated everything correctly. But on this one, I really didn't have paragraphs. I just had like this blob the writing blob. And I didn't really like stay along here. I didn't do things correctly.
So those are all of those new things that you did are things that you can do every single time you write any kind of an essay, right?
Always looking at everyone else's improvement and including mine. Honestly, at first, when we got our essays, both of our essays and we were comparing them, I was like, well, can we really make that much improvement in 1 year? And I didn't even realize it, but how much we've learned, and none of us even realize how much we've learned this whole year. It used to be
I think the important thing was to compare the two. You probably wouldn't have realized if you didn't see what you used to do, right? You guys, okay, one more, go ahead, Sarah.
I noticed that when I wrote this, I was like, when I read it for the second time, I was like, wow, I definitely rushed through it because I know that I could have been so much better on here if I would have known the writing strategies back then. But now that I know them now, I'm even happier because it's just nice to reflect on something when you've done it so horribly.
And now you're doing it so awesome. You guys are so amazing. I am so incredibly proud of you, and I am confident, 100% confident that whenever you are in a situation that requires you to do any of this kind of writing and reading, you're going to ace it. So all in this, I'm so proud of you.
I'm human. I think I can speak for everybody when I say that our second essay was way better, and that now that we know we can do it, we have more confidence.
Amazing, amazing. Pat on the back, everybody. Thanks for coming.
So I think I can speak for everyone. It's great to hear from the voices of our children. Thank you again, Mary, for sharing your class with us and sharing all that they've learned. At this time, I would like to thank you again for the opportunity to present to the Board of Education, and I'd like to thank the literacy coaches and the principals, my fellow humanities director, and Mr. Small for supporting us while we've been working really hard in this unit. And I'd like to open up for any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. Ms. Malin,
If that's okay. So I'm in a unique position with all of this because when my oldest was in 4th grade, it was a pilot program that just a couple of teachers were trying out in Frank P. Long. By the time my son got to kindergarten, he was the first group to start this from kindergarten. So I've seen this process from the very beginning, and to see where you've come just in these last couple of years with this, I mean, it is amazing to see, and I look at what my children are capable of writing, and the beauty of the way that you've all put this out is that every child can improve. It does not matter where they start, it's their journey, and you can see improvements, and you can see success, and anytime kids meet with success, and the praise you gave them in that video was so cool, but they thrive off of that. So if they can see that success, and I have chills because of how much you have put into it, and to see it from the ground up is amazing. So thank you all because you're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you. Mrs. Santos.
If I may, I'm going to take a step back because I'm a little older than Miss Mallon. And I remember coming to the district and again being a PTA mom at Critz, and I loved Critz. But then I go to PTA council and I found out at that point in time that our 3 wonderful elementary schools had 3 different reading programs. And I was a secondary educator, so I'd be perfectly honest with you, what did I know about early literacy? But I took some time to educate myself, and thankfully then, that was one of the pushes for me to come on to the board, because I knew it was about early literacy. Oh my goodness, how I knew it was about early literacy. Because as a secondary educator, whether I was teaching 11th grade, originally my first year, American History and Government, and we had to get them through that regions. Quite frankly, I'm that old that the global didn't exist then. And I was the first teacher at William Floyd High School to teach global radiation. And then I really knew about why literacy was so important, because they couldn't read the words and they needed the vocabulary before they could even begin to read the Regent's question. And then I began to, oh my goodness, learn the importance of literacy, because I am so grateful to Mrs. Monte and Mrs. Poore and Mrs. Lindo and Mr. Pettit and Miss Nobby and Miss Negri and Mrs. Kwiatkowski as my children went through our elementary school, Critz, and then to Frank P. Long. And oh my goodness, it's about literacy. And I was fortunate to be able to educate myself and educate my children. And I am profoundly in awe of elementary school teachers, because as I did the research and for a degree that I wanted to attain, I read the research that if our children are not on reading grade level by the end of 2nd grade, chances are they will never catch up. And to me, that was earth-shattering, which is why, sometimes much to the chagrin of people in this board, I've been pushing for that pre-K and that pre-K building, and I can't begin to tell you how excited I am about that, and about expanding it for the students who need it and want it, and the parents who need it and want it. And I think we have the pledge to also help physically get some of the students who need full-day pre-K to that building and to that program, because if we could build that capacity, just as Ms. Mallon said, in the last 5 years, it's amazing what you have done, but if we have more of our students starting in pre-K with this, the skies are the limits. And Ms. Pettit, the atmosphere that you create in your classroom, it's such a safe environment. They weren't students, they were masters of learning themselves. You facilitated, and they each were their own teachers, and they were able to learn. They were doing analysis and synthesis that some of our high school kids have not mastered yet, because each and every one of you brought them along to that point where they were really colleagues that was a collegial circle. Oh my gosh. So I'm gonna stop now because I'm gonna cry. It's just amazing, and thank you so very much. And I hope that not only do we continue that professional deal with people pushing in, but the fact that we have our master educators being turnkey in the district is really, that is the key. That's the ownership to build that capacity. And my last little bit, I'm hoping that we have our technology integration specialists at their disposal to bring it to light on the screen, because that does catch our children's attention. And then they can facilitate and they can teach their fellow classmates. We can empower them. The sky is the limit. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Griffin?
Are you about to cry too?
First, thank you so much. I have children in Brookhaven, and I watched, as I was walking through the building, some of the writing that's displayed on the walls, and it is incredible, and it's really impressive how they're using the technology. And I'm wondering, is there a plan in place so we can scaffold this, so that third graders who are going over to Frank P., when they get to the fourth grade teachers, the teachers can see what the kids did, because there's a disconnect. And we have the technology available, so we're building a bridge using the technology to make portfolios for the kids to have them follow the students, so that this way there isn't, let's start over. It's already, you've done the work, because, and again, the work is impressive, but you can see what the student's done. Is that in place? And the second part, I think it plays a huge role in all the things that are going on. It's about even the look of the classrooms. I'm looking at the furniture, kids sitting on those balls, bright colored. We're moving away from the 1900s desks, so that we have that feel. The students are and engage in an environment that reflects what it is that we want them to have. So those two pieces, I'd like to see more of that furniture, more of that engaging atmosphere that I know our teachers already bring to our classrooms, but it also the investment we're making in the facilities, in the look of the classroom. And that extends even to the high school. We keep putting them into these desks, but let's treat them like college students. Let's teach them like professionals. Have desks, rolling chairs, and things like that, because I do think it plays a major role in the students' expectations of themselves when the environment reflects what we think of them. So those two pieces, the furniture, and also the technology portfolio piece, so we can keep track of what it is they're authentically doing. And the other thing, you mentioned rubrics. The consistency of rubrics across the district, so we see how that growth is happening and where the deficiencies are. And we can do it without multiple choice tests. We can do it with rubrics and portfolios.
Yes, so to answer the first question,
Yes.
Dr. Griffin, we do currently have paper portfolios. The literacy coaches and I developed over the past few years, portfolios get transferred up from grade level. Certain writing, we call them on-demand writing, but essentially what it is the students spend a day just writing a narrative, an informational text, or an argument text of their own choice. So they spend one period and they'll write that. Some of those on-demands that happen before a unit is taught are in there, and then some published pieces or completed process pieces are involved in those portfolios. And the teachers all have a checklist over which parts go in, which pieces go into the portfolio at a particular grade level. So currently it's paper-based, but moving ahead with technology, especially now that we're using Google Classrooms and things like that, we have the potential now to scan these things and put them in for the students who don't type them in on the classrooms or grades that are typing them like 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, where they may be publishing in their Chromebooks. We have an even easier way to keep track of that. So that's something we'll be looking towards moving to support the transfer of information up one grade to the next. The other piece that helps that is because we're using the units of study from Teachers College, they are a spiral curriculum where all those literacy standards are taught year after year after year in both reading and writing. Now that we have the support from Teachers College and the professional development plan, it gives us even more access to the information at the source from Columbia University. And we have their staff developers who are working with the most latest models of things. So that helps us as well in ensuring that what happens in 3rd grade goes up to 4th grade to 5th grade. For example, one recommendation that we'll often make is that at the beginning of 4th grade, pull out some of the charts that they used in 3rd grade. So you remind children what they learned, because they might say, I don't remember that, but they did.
It's a good visual.
Yeah, it's a good visual, and the charts that they used, which they had shared with you, we always try to ensure that there's icons on there with a visual image, because that kind of cements the brain to learning. It's easier to recall that visual image, and
Pictures
so
worth
that
1,000 words.
Yes, exactly, and so that's part of it too, where things are getting carried out. But as far as the portfolios, that is something that we want to move towards. Flexible seating, 21st
Yes.
century classrooms, collaboration, right? That was question 2. So you could see some of the classrooms do have some options for flexible seating. In the workshop model, kids have choice as to where they sit. It's sort of inherent in workshop teaching that kids are given that choice, and it does create flexibility. It's nice to see that the district is supporting and the Board of Education is supporting us integrating these resources into our classrooms. But often you'll see kids sitting on a carpet or a little cushion or in some of those beanbag chairs. They've been around for a while. And then you have those other more formal flexible seating options. You'll see kids sitting in groups rather in rows because we are preparing students for 21st century learning. They're going to be going into the workforce where they need to learn how to collaborate. They need to learn how to solve unstructured problems together. And so that's really where we're working towards. And your third question was rubrics. So yes, part of the units of study that we have for informational writing, narrative writing, and argument writing, or up until 5th grade, it's opinion writing, you'll see that every grade level has a consistent rubric. There's a teacher rubric, and then there's a student-facing rubric. And so, like I was in a 1st grade classroom a couple weeks ago. The 1st graders use that student-facing rubric, and it's aligned to the end of the year benchmarks by grade level. And as they move up and they continue to use the rubrics, students are familiar with the language, and they know what they are either doing, almost doing, or not doing yet. And that helps them to set goals for learning. The formal rubrics that we use for the formative mid-year assessments were consistent 3 through 5, with in mind the end of the year benchmarks. So there was a 2-point rubric for the short answer questions and a 4-point rubric for the extended responses.
And the formative assessments reflect those rubrics
Yes.
and the writing.
Yep, and we scored them. We had groups of teachers that came together. I showed them, we trained on how to use the rubrics, and then they scored using the rubrics.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Any other questions? All right, I'm going to ask a few questions, and then Lisa, Mrs. Santo, you had another question?
I was just asking more of a point of reference, but go ahead.
All right. So, thank you. Thank you, everybody who presented tonight. Could you, and many questions were already asked about what you need to improve or what's been working, and I'd like to know more specifically how the district can support you more in improving the successes that you've already been able to show us tonight.
So that's a big question. I think the ongoing
pretend the
Give her
superintendent
24
is not
hours to make the
here.
list.
And then
We'll
you're
collaborate
speaking to
on
the
that
Board
one.
of Education.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're doing right now is building capacity across our classrooms, but we also need to support the teachers with the training and the support that they need. So I would say ongoing professional development. The model that we've had at Teachers College in our schools.
Hold on one
this year.
second, Ms. Brennan. I know some of the students have to leave. Now would be the time if you have to leave. Thank you for being here tonight. Good luck in school tomorrow.
Thank you for participating
This is a good
in
conversation. You might not want
government
to
and
miss it.
registered to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
So,
Ms. Brennan.
thank you. The professional development, I think the support for that has been really wonderful this year. The teachers who have been experiencing the staff developers from Columbia here in the schools have had a positive impact in their classrooms. Their students are really actually receptive to having people in the room with them. I think everybody's learning together, and I think that's the key part of this type of professional development is when we're learning, our kids are learning, and we're all learning together. So I think ongoing support for that would be helpful. And you know, when you look at the things that we presented tonight, you can see we did align it to the Board of Education priorities.
Which I was going to comment on, thank you so much, because we don't often see the work that, we really labor over establishing the board priorities, and then we never really see how it materializes, so thank you for doing that.
So, you know, that professional development support for our teachers, the classroom libraries, we've had a lot of support for building our classroom libraries up because we need as many books as we can get into our classrooms. Something that we're working on more is looking at what are our children in our classrooms represented in our libraries. So a couple years ago when we started doing this work, we were getting basic classroom libraries in place, bookshelves, book bins, things like this, just to make books accessible to children. And now we want to make sure that every child can see themselves in their classroom library. Can they find a book where they see a character like themselves? Are there informational books that are teaching them about the world around them? Just ongoing support, I think, for our teachers, the literacy coaches. You know, again, I have to thank them. They've really been instrumental in getting this work done. They meet regularly every week. They meet with me monthly. They go to professional development at Teachers College. They go on Saturdays to the Saturday reunions, as well as a lot of teachers spend their Saturdays twice a year at Teachers College at really great workshops. So just support for our teachers, support for our students, so that they have these opportunities to continue learning together.
And keep checking in with us and keep us up to date on your progress. I'll make one more comment and then I'll go back to Mr. Santo. Also, with respect to Ms. Pettit's class, it also looked to me, and I agreed with what our board member said about it was so collaborative what we saw. And I think you were training some future Board of Education members in that. I truly do.
Can I just add too that sampling of children that were around that table, those are not the top of the top kids. I teach in an inclusion class, and those children, that was a perfect representation from the bottom up, and they're just they're.
And you know, the oral, like the piece that you saw with the students conversing, that oral rehearsal, we've been really working on as a district through the grade levels, especially as we're moving up from the primary up to the intermediate grades. If students can speak an essay, which essentially they were doing, they can write it, but first they have to be able to speak it. So, you know, thank you, Mary, for letting us see that.
Yeah, no, it was a wonderful display, thank you. And I love the concept of the anchor chart. I need that at my back door each morning. Wouldn't it serve all of us well?
Yeah, I'm going to use the anchor chart tonight.
I'm going home tonight to draw one. Mr. Sandy, you got another comment?
And they're using that in the AP classes, AP government, because a picture is worth 1,000 words, and it does make a difference. Most of us are visual learners, even though we were brought up in a system where people talked at us, chalk and talk, but most of us are visual and we're kinesthetic. And the more that we introduce that into our classrooms, the more successful all of our students are, that you couldn't tell when you walk in who has whatever label or differing ability. And because the differentiated instruction was very obvious, that they've been trained up to that point where in 5th grade, they've got it. You were facilitating. They knew what they were doing. They were reflective writers. They knew how to have that discussion. And they were honest, too, because kids are very honest when you give them the opportunity in a safe environment. They'll say, yeah, I really didn't do such a good job on it, but this is what I'm going to do next time. And that's really so empowering. Again,
yeah, I
wonderful
thank you
things.
both for bringing up the issue about the furniture and the flexible seating. One of the first items that came to mind for me in looking at the pictures that you had was how boring it was for me as a young student in class, sitting in those chairs all day long, and I thought, wow, that would have been so much nicer and so much more conducive to learning. Yeah, you probably heard me share before, I was a late learner, so I really didn't appreciate education until later in life, and I finished my MBA in my early 50s. And so I think I learned more as a result, but I also saw what was missing, and not necessarily, I used to blame myself because of that, but the system didn't catch up to us yet, and now it is. And I'm glad that we could be a part of it, and I'm very proud of everything that you were able to show us tonight and everything you're able to accomplish. What is happening at Brookhaven?
So we
Elementary
have,
school this week?
Teachers College offers us as part of our package, it's not an additional cost.
Okay.
They offer a lead teacher group. What that is any of the districts on Long Island who have this level of staff development, the teachers will get together at suburban schools. So this is the K2 on Friday. So there's a group of teachers from our district, from each building, that attend them. Some of the times they at Brookhaven, which is very exciting because teachers from neighboring districts are
Very
going to
cool
come
to
in.
come to see Brookhaven,
Yeah.
which is beautiful.
And you'll get a, excuse me.
And you don't have to endure the joys of the LRR.
Yes, well, and so a lot of the schools that are part of this are Long Island schools, but they can be in Nassau or Suffolk County. And so their lead teachers will come out, join our lead teachers. They have a higher level staff developer who's, worked longer with the project and is a little bit more advanced. And so she comes out, she'll have a meeting with all the teachers, demonstrate a few things, talk about some latest research. And then they go into a classroom, she'll model it, and then the teachers have an opportunity to also try that right there. And when they go to the other schools, just like they're coming to Brookhaven, they actually are able to walk away with something that they can turnkey and share with their colleagues, like the next day. And every teacher who's involved in that has had tremendously positive feedback about it. So if you can stop by, that would be great.
What time would that be?
So the schedule will be anywhere from 9 to 2 o'clock, and they're going to be going in kindergarten classroom, a first grade classroom, and a second grade classroom. And I'm sure we could share the schedule if you'd like
great.
to see where it will be. In
Sure.
our home base will be room 6 in Brookhaven.
Room 6.
And then we'll be going to the different classrooms.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I will make every effort to get there to observe. Mr. Sanford?
For many years, I've heard about the wonderful things going on at Columbia's Teacher College, and in fact, that was first introduced to me by Miss Palermo, and I think Miss Galina's here. And way back in the day when we were afraid of the 4th grade assessment, particularly having kids coming from 3 different buildings with 3 different reading programs, and I say bless the 4th grade teachers for getting that all together and having the assessment in January, no less. They were the teachers who opened that up to me to learn about what was going on at Teachers College. And in my previous life, when I had some free time during the day, when I didn't have to sub at Pet Med, I could go out and I saw some wonderful things going on in Ms. Palermo's and Ms. Galina's classroom, which was just the epitome of all this, and it's all come to fruition. That being said, I have noticed on the Columbia Teachers College schedule that there is going to be a seminar workshop for board members on Thursday, May 2nd. I will get additional information to the board, and it caught my eye because Thursday's my mandatory day off from subbing, so I may take the train in, and I'm really excited about that possibility. Because we've all availed ourselves of NSBA training, and I'm a trained NSBA facilitator, so I've kind of been there, done that. I want to go to Teachers College and play, so I'm kind of excited, and I'll share that information with the board.
Great. Thank you so much. Any other comments before we
Thank you again.
say thank you again?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us up
Yes.
to budgets.
Yeah, so that'll be a difficult act to follow. However,
Try as you must.
we'll try to do that. Our next budget presentation is budget presentation number 5, and it is our staffing analysis. A little different than previous budget presentations. Not going to see the line by line or where all the money is. This is what all that money is being spent on. So I am going to start off with the elementary, pass it off to Mr. Briggs for the secondary, and then bring it back with the actual numbers and bottom line. So, our personnel or staffing is divided into 4 broad areas of functional activity: administrative, elementary, secondary, and non-instructional staff. As in the past, we always budget for a contingent or 2 positions because staffing is fluid and quite frankly, it's not fixed and determined at this time. So we allow for monies in the budget for unexpected changes in staff. Our administrative staff consists of central office administration, building level administration, and district-wide administration. And in that regard, with administrative staffing, we are projecting the increase of one position, and that is specifically for our new building, the principal of South Haven Early Childhood Center. Elementary staffing projections are based on our March enrollments. Our district guideline is 25 students per class in kindergarten through 6th grade. However, quite frankly, we are well below that right now, and the board is aware of that. Using those guidelines, what we generally do before we split is when all classes or all sections on that grade level reach 26. But again, we're well below that, and I don't anticipate having that concern at all. Enrollment projections of grade level sections are reviewed throughout the school year and into the summer months before any final decisions are made with regard to elementary sections. So this was a difficult first chart to build, and I'm sorry that Mr. Santo is not here, because she would probably be the one with most of the questions. So as I mentioned, we have a new building, a new facility, South Haven Early Childhood Center. What I tried to do here was to show, and for the rest of the presentation, looking at the elementary sections, you will see the table divided in half. Current at the top, and then what we're projecting at the bottom, okay? Differently than others here is because with the pre-K program, it is delivered in a combination of our own staff and what's called a community-based organization, CBO. Okay, so what I did was I combined both of those here, so we can see the involvement in our current pre-K program. Right now at Brookhaven, we have 5 half-day classes. I have a pointer on it, Scott. There we go. So I'm pointing to the chart on my right. So at Brookhaven, we have 5 pre-K classes, half-day, and they are 3 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. 65 kids are in those, so an average of 13 in a classroom. We have a CBO, actually it's Head Start this year, where we have 20 students enrolled in one class. And then we have a CBO for our half-day classes, Bellport Methodist Church, who has 1 morning and 1 afternoon class, or 2 classes, and an average class size of 15 in those classes. That's a total of 8 sections currently occurring. 115 students are in those sections, or in our pre-K program. As we know, many families, our times don't work. We don't have a lot of full-day opportunities, and they do go outside the district. So this in no way reflects what could be in South Country. Okay, so for next year, now here's the tricky part. The top line there is South Haven Early Childhood Center, obviously. While this is a projection, it's difficult to make the projection because, as you know, we get a lot of money from the state in the form of a pre-K grant. That's $620,000. $624,380, Dr. Burgess said. Right? So we get a nice chunk of money from the state. This helps support our program. So depending upon that money, depending upon how our RFP returns, because as you know, every school year we put out a request for a proposal from outside organizations to provide the program that we can't provide because we can't afford the whole thing. Okay? So moving to South Haven, we are going to craft the RFP to allow for 3 classrooms for the CBO to use. So we're hopeful the number per student will come in low enough so we'll be able to increase the number of full-day classes offered, because that's the goal. That's what families want. So what we have projected here is a real wish, and we're hopeful that the RFP will come in to allow us to support something like this. Okay, so South Haven Early Childhood Center, we're projecting 3 full-day sections offered by our own teachers. We're hopeful and projecting that A CBO will respond to the RFP, allowing us to offer another 3 full-day classes in that building. And then we expect that we'll have an outside CBO in the community that will offer a half-day program, and we could hopefully support 2 morning and 2 afternoon classes. That allows for 180 youngsters to provide. However, I want to again caution the board, a projection and a hope in terms of what the RFP produces. So we don't know where we are, where we will be until the end of April.
They release it beginning mid-April. Fill out the RFP and send it out.
So we have to wait for the state to release the information to put the RFP out, which will be mid-April, as Dr. Gurja said. So we probably won't have returns until end of May then, I guess. Okay? So that's where we are at that. And as you can see, if we are fortunate enough to reach that projection, we would be able to house 180 kids in our pre-K program, which would be fantastic. And quite frankly, I'm not sure there's 180 kids out there to provide the program for.
What was the most we had? It was 2 years ago. I think it was the most when we got.
It was 170 something, 176.
It was that high?
73.
It was, okay.
Okay, moving on to Brookhaven. Again, currents at the top, projections at the bottom. As you know, last school year, the board determined that Brookhaven would be our dual language magnet school. We drew off about 6 students per elementary school for that kindergarten dual language program. We are projecting to do similar or increase that number this school year. So you will see here at the top, we have 2 and 1, and next year it will be 2 and 2, because dual language is already fully throughout Brookhaven, but only the Brookhaven area students are there. So the second class is the draw-in from the other elementary schools that we do have. We are projecting a decrease in Brookhaven from 28 sections to 25. That is a direct result of the 3 pre-K teachers going out and going to South Trent. So we expect to have the same sections there, 1 additional dual language class.
Quick question.
Yes.
It's budgeted, but just going back again to pre-K, to the half-day kids at proposed and the full-day kids at the CBO, will they get busing provided from the district and the busing proposal?
Yes, if the board, if busing.
If we're able to get busing in the budget.
We have to do it for everybody.
We have to do it for everybody,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, we do
Okay.
the CBOs as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a quick question. The space that's currently occupied within Brookhaven for pre-K, do we know what we're going to be doing with that yet, or?
Dr. Raymond has some ideas. I think one of them is a STEM lab, as over in Dr. Raymond.
Yes, I'm
Oh!
Yes, I'm
But I am told that Dr. Raymond has some good plans for the space.
I'm
that
sure,
we
I'm
have.
sure. Okay.
And hopefully we'll be able to expand the language program even further.
Yes.
Let me see.
Well, you just never know.
Had
Surprises.
a big person sitting in front of me. Brookhaven, good? Move on. Okay, Kramer Street. Kramer Street, really no change here. You'll see a change in where the gen ed sections are at, but we have 18 sections in each of the in the current and the projected school year, so there's absolutely no change there. Class sizes stay consistent at Kramer as well. Moving to crits. Crits numbers are dropping, so you will see that we have a projection of 2 less sections at crits. Overall, in terms of our elementary sections, we are projecting 2 less sections, and that's a direct result of 2 retirements that we have. Quite frankly, I think we could lose more than 2 sections. But as the board knows, I prefer not accessing teachers, and not until you get to the point where I have to do that will I recommend that to the board. So we're absorbing them where we can. While I am showing you a projection here on crits as a reduction, very likely one of those projections could move to another school such as Frank B. Long, which the numbers are also low. It's going to depend upon really how many kindergartens do show up in terms of crits and where those numbers are. As I said a little earlier, we continue to look at the numbers, and this thing is very fluid, especially at this time. Frank P. Long, again, the only big difference here at Frank P. Long is our first third grade group from Brookhaven is now moving into Frank P. Long. So this will be the first year that Frank P. Long will have a dual language class. You'll see that in the fourth grade, 10 gen ed sections, one dual language section, and 2 integrated co-teaching sections. And we anticipate that class size to be about 18, 19. Okay, but that's still a wash, no increase at Frank P. regarding sections. So, looking at our elementary staffing projections in summary, South Haven, we have a +3, Brookhaven, and -3 as a result of the pre-K moving. No change at Kramer, Kritz -2, and frankly, no change for an overall decrease in elementary section of 2.0. Okay, so in addition to the elementary sections, there are integrated co-teaching that's going on in our schools. They were the third column you saw on those tables. You'll see 7 at Brookhaven. There are no integrated co-teaching at Kramer or Kritz, and there are 6, and it's projected 1 less at Frank P. Long for next school year. That is a 1.0 decrease overall for integrated co-teaching. And later in the presentation, you will see that that actual staff position is getting moved into the secondary. Oh, sorry. In addition to integrated co-teaching, we have special class program teachers and classes in our schools. Those are housed 1 at Brookhaven, 3 at Kramer, 4 at Kritz, and 5 at Frank P. Long. And we are projecting no change in those special program classes in each of those buildings.
Could you define special class?
Sure, so those are your 12-1-1s, 8-1-1s, 15-1-1s, okay. Not where the kids are integrated with the gen.
Okay.
In addition, we have a resource program in each of our buildings. These are, I don't want you to think that we have 0.4 of a person in the building, right? So obviously they're shared between buildings. But this is the full-time equivalent position assigned to these buildings. And you'll see no change in these classes. In addition, at the elementary level, we have other elementary teaching classes and projections. We're anticipating no change in any of these programs as well. I'm going to read through them, but as you can see, our E&L and all your extras and specials, so to speak. Okay, so taking a look at the elementary staffing projections in whole, in the classroom, we're seeing a less of 2.0, integrated co-teaching, less 1.0, special class, no change, resource, no change, and other teaching, no change, for an overall decrease of 3.0 full-time equivalent positions at the elementary level. I'm going to pass the baton to Mr. Briggs.
Thank you. So, first thing we'd like to do is talk about the enrollment at the secondary level. And just understand that the enrollment that is in these slides and in this presentation are based on the current March enrollments. We get an enrollment report every month, so it is in flux. And the numbers that you're going to see are in flux because each of the buildings, middle school and high school, are in the process of building their master schedule. They've completed course selections with the students through the guidance department, but now they have tallies, they generate those numbers, what the needs may be, but everything is in flux, and there's a few reasons it would be in flux. We don't know success rate of students by the end of the year. There's going to be certain students that fail. There's going to be students that need to attend summer school. We don't know the success rates of those. And we're also still in the process of evaluating services that students may need, whether it's counseling, E&L services, reading. So that's why these numbers are in flux. Currently, at the middle school, grade 6, we have 333 students. You're going to see a slight decrease there from next year to 323, roughly 10 teachers. At the 7th grade level, currently...
Students.
Yes.
Yeah, don't say 10 teachers, you give us heart failure.
Sorry. Grade 7, 354 currently, going to 333. That's a decrease of 21 students, and 8th grade, 341 currently students, going to 354, and that's an increase of 13 students, but an overall decrease in the building of 18 students. High school. Currently, 335 students, projecting for next year 341, and this does not, we can't anticipate who may move into the district or who may leave, but that's an increase of 6 students. Grade 10, 354 students currently, going to 335 as we roll those numbers up. That's a decrease of 19 students. Grade 11, 304 students currently. That's where I think you see the biggest change, going to 354 students. It's a 50 student increase in the 11th grade. In grade 12, 343 students, going to 304, and that's a decrease of 39 students. Total change in the school is only 2 students. So our secondary staffing projections for next year, 6th grade, there will be no change. We're anticipating having the same number of teachers. English, there is a slight increase of 0.6 or 3 classes. Math, that's where you're going to see the biggest decrease. 0.5 decrease at the middle school and a 0.8 decrease at the high school. And in speaking with the principals, again, this is anticipated, but there does seem to be one less course offering in AP. That would be the computer science class. And they're going to be running one less algebra class, geometry class, and there was one other class in question. So you're going to see some decrease there. The way we'll deal with that, though, as far as budgeting, right now we're anticipating having an opening next year in math. So if need be, we don't fill that opening to absorb. Science is another an increase of 0.1 at the middle school and a decrease of 0.8 at the high school. And again, currently, we're still waiting to see what's going to happen for next year, but currently we do have a teacher that is out on a leave that may be out again next year. And we'll talk about that as we move forward. And if that's the case with that decrease, we just wouldn't fill that with a full-time person to cover for the year. Social studies, a 0.2 increase at the middle school and a 0.1 increase overall of a 0.3. That may change as we go forward, but as we do need to cover that, or if we do need to cover that, that's something where we could look at overages for teachers rather than just hire an additional teacher as a 0.3. That's only a period in hand. Reading, no change. E&L, that's still being evaluated by Monica Tetuan, the director of E&L. She has told me over the last day or two that looking at the elementary staffing in E&L, she may be able to decrease a little bit of the services at the elementary to cover some of that increase. So we'll know more as we get further into the spring. World language, 0.4 increase at the high school. Business, there's a 0.2 decrease, and again, we have a retirement in the business department. So if need be, we just wouldn't fill that with a full-time teacher. We could do it part-time. We'll see.
That's virtual enterprise.
Well, you're right, it is. But we'll see.
We cannot fill that.
Yes, so, those numbers again are still in flux. Technology, no change. Family consumer science, no change. But for this page of staffing, there's a total increase of 0.2. Other staffing areas on the secondary level, art, looking at a 0.2 increase. Music, health, phys ed, no change. Special education, which Dr. Gianni had referenced earlier from the elementary slides, there is that projected decrease at Frank B. Long, which would then roll up to the middle school. And they had already built in a 0.1 increase, which is an every other day class. So by adding or opening another section of inclusion at the middle school, that becomes a 1.1, but one full teacher would be coming from the elementary, and at the same time, the high school is projecting a decrease of 0.4. Speech, psychologist, social worker, guidance, library, and cadet corps, there is no change projected. But our totals on the secondary level, including the previous page, would be a 1.1 increase in staffing in the secondary. So if you look at that overall total by building, Bellport Middle School currently 107.2 teaching staff, going to 108.2, that's 1.0 increase. And Bellport High School 131.6 currently, next year 131.7, only a 0.1 increase projected. And if you total those, it's 1.1 increase, FTE increase at the secondary level. Non-instructional staffing, teaching assistants, no change for next year. Aides and monitors, no change. Clerical, you see an increase of 1, that is projected for South Haven. Buildings and grounds, an increase of 1.5, also projected for South Haven, or the, I say South Haven, the early, South Haven Early Childhood Center. Responders, increase of 1 for South Haven. Nurses, increase of 1 for South Haven. And then the school health aide, the athletic trainer, and lab assistants, no change. So your total non-instructional staff increases 4.5. So the staffing summary overall, administrative staff, which Dr. Gianni covered earlier, was the principal for South Haven. Elementary, a decrease of 3. Secondary, an increase of 1.1. And the non-instructional staff, increase of 4.5. Total staff increase of 3.6.
Any questions on the secondary before I move on? Mrs. Zanto?
The +1 administrative staff, I thought we're covering that with already in place.
No. The South Haven Early Childhood Center, we have a building, we have to support it with a principal.
We'll have to check, because I'm not sure where we're going with that.
Okay.
I thought we had another conversation.
Okay.
All right. Other questions I do have. Do we know at this point where we are with our percentages of annual reviews that have been completed?
They're still in progress.
Well,
yes.
trust me, I covered 6 of them today. But do we know where we are? It's how accurate are these projections? Do we have like 80% of the annual reviews accomplished, or?
I can't tell you the percentage of the annual reviews accomplished. I can tell you they're in progress, and the budget reflects the FTEs needed for.
With this. All right, just some other specific questions. You know, we've been talking a lot about supporting all of our career programs, and we certainly have a phenomenal virtual enterprise program. Now we have 2 different teams running in our building. So when I see a cut of 1 instructional person in business, that does scare me. So have we?
It was not 1.
I thought you said.
No.
Did I misunderstand you?
We have a retirement.
One retirement.
Well, that's.
The decrease, I think, was a 0.2.
Okay.
So
sorry
if we
about that.
needed, we'd replace with a 0.8.
Okay, we'll have to talk more about that.
Okay.
then.
Yeah, the 1.0 isn't necessarily all associated with virtual enterprise.
No, I'm just
Could
thinking
you answer the
because.
question though, will virtual enterprise
Yes,
be
there is
staffed?
no plan to reduce
If
that.
that's what you're.
More than
full-time.
adequately staffed. I
There's-
mean, that is a special program that I would hope that we have an ad in the paper already. If not, we ought to, because we need the right person to
There's
take the
no
reins.
plan on discontinuing or reducing virtual enterprise.
Yeah, I
Just
think
want
that
to
was.
double
that was the
check
question.
that we are all set, because it's a phenomenal program.
These are requests that come straight from the budget managers. We have not.
Very well. Thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking we're cutting it, but I want to make sure that we're very well prepared to continue its successful run here. That's all. I'll hold off on any other questions for now. I gotta look through my notes.
Okay.
Okay, budget development process. The current budget plan is truly program-driven. As I mentioned earlier, maintains our small class sizes that we currently have. There's no change in fine and performing arts or interscholastic athletics. Continued support of our intervention programs, and also, as I mentioned, includes staffing for the new early childhood center and including pre-K participation to transfer youngsters to that center. So when we take a look at what that all costs, here are our projected expenses, and they are basically a sum of all the lines that you've looked at all these last few meetings in terms of the budget development. So our expenses are about 2.1 million in terms of an increase. These figures reflect all reasonable requests from our budget managers, and obviously they change as we move along the budget process. In terms of revenues, as you can see, in terms of our tax levy limit, we have the ability to bring in another $2 million as a result of that limit. We have a reduction in state aid at about $400,000 at this time. As you know, the legislative budget's not in. I understand that they're getting closer. Hopefully we will have it on time, but at this point we do not know what our final number would be. Slight increase in pilots, slight increase in miscellaneous revenue. Still, the board needs to determine what we want to do with the designated fund balance, allocation from reserves, and the debt service transfer. I remind the board in that first column what we did previously. Last year, we were just under $4 million in terms of designated fund balance. We applied some reserve money that we felt was in excess, giving money back to our community in the tune of $400,000. And as you know, we have a debt service transfer reduction that we've been doing for, is this 3 or 4 years?
5 years this year.
5 years, and this is year 3, where we have been giving $600,000 back to our community each year. So what are some of our challenges? Contractual obligations, as you know, are $1.7 million. Our transportation contract increased. So as you know, we just got an RFP in. The board will be considering the contract of our new transportation services. That's an increase of 11% in terms of what we currently pay, or $616,000. Tax levy limit, as I mentioned, is 2.2 million or 3.36. We continue to struggle with under and unfunded mandates and a decrease in state aid funding. And as I just mentioned, the state aid proposal is still unknown. So how does that all look on one slide in terms of our financial challenges? So we have our revenues and expenses here, and I'll just bring you right to the bottom of the page in terms of the total revenues and the total expenses. Currently, we are at a $5.1 million gap. I remind the board that does not include what you choose to designate for fund balance, what you choose to allocate from your reserves, or the debt service transfer. If you were to consider doing the same as you did last year, that gap turns to $124,000.
That's a nice one.
It's a much nicer number. But then I do not have the authority to make those allocations.
You can lead a horse to water.
So that's what's before you now. Next week, let's go to what's next. Let's go to the next slide. We continue to finalize our staffing projections, as Mr. Briggs mentioned. We'll continue to review current expenses and requests for possible cuts or reductions from our budget managers. Once the state aid is finalized, we can apply that. And then finally, the board is going to need to determine where you want to be with the tax levy. We have an unusual situation is that our tax levy limit that we have the ability to go to the public with is above 2%. Many years it's been below 2%. Recognizing we have some significant increases in expenses this year, particularly with the transportation budget, that's something that you certainly do want to consider. And then finally, what the board wants to do in terms of appropriation of the reserves and fund balance. We actually meet next week, and next week's a workshop. It's not a budget action, a board action session. This will be the only item on the agenda for the board to deliberate and give administration more direction. Happy to take any comments or direction at this point in time. Don't know if we'll have the state budget. It'd be great if we have the state budget before next Wednesday, but I'm not crossing my fingers, so.
For next week, with respect to the tax levy and the 2% cap, because the one slide in there shows that the overall budget would actually be at 3%, just be prepared to explain that fully to the district so that we understand how the calculation is established and what that tax levy,
You want a quick review of that first or second presentation?
Yes. Yeah, I think that would be very helpful. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Sanders?
Might I also suggest, since this was discussed and people are listening and tax caps can be very confusing for people, that this be put on the front page of our website, the explanation that even though some things say 3.36%, we are not here saying the tax cap. This is just an education process that if you haven't been sitting here for a couple of years.
You want to do that
it's
prior to
very-
the
could be
board
very-
making a decision what you're doing now?
Absolutely, proactive
Yes.
so that
Okay.
it doesn't become a
Yeah, we are not-
game
we are
of
not piercing
Facebook
the cap.
telephone. We
We're
are
staying
not
within the
piercing the
cap.
cap.
And how that's doing. Okay?
Very good.
Thank you. Any other questions for Gianni? Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. As I mentioned, next week is expenses and revenue update, and then hopefully we'll be adopting.
So just by
on
way of
April
reminder
17th.
for the board, next week is a workshop.
Yes.
It's not a business meeting. For those who are listening, it'll be an expense and revenue update on the overall budget. And that'll be the last meeting before we adopt the budget. The adoption of the budget will be on April 17th. Okay?
And do we decide the location? Maybe we can confirm that because
Yeah,
people are
we
listening and
actually-
watching.
We actually did in the resolution. It's
Yeah.
here.
It's here. The
Yeah,
April
definitely
17th
confirm,
meeting.
but just so
Yes.
people, because people here, we voted on it, but they might not have seen
Correct.
it.
The adoption of the budget, again, will be April 17th, right here in this building. Executive session will start at 6:15. The meeting is scheduled to start at 7:30. All right? All right, thank you very much. That now brings us to
Brings us
your
to item
third
3.
item.
Yes. So the next item for discussion is an adjustment to the school calendar. As the board is aware, we plan an additional day in the school calendar to allow for the cancellation of school due to inclement weather. That inclement weather has not come yet this school year. And we find ourselves with an additional day in the school calendar for most 10-month employees. Administration looked at a number of dates and ultimately recommend the board include Thursday, May 23rd as part of the Memorial Day weekend, thereby closing school for students and members of the BTA and BTAA. May 23rd happens to also be a date suggested by the BTA. If the board approves this recommendation, notice to the community would go out and school would thereby be closed May 23rd through Tuesday, May 28th.
All right, we need a motion and a second to amend the calendar to include May 23rd as part of Memorial Day weekend, thereby closing school for students, and that's because we did not use all of the snow days. Motion by Ms. Malin, seconded by Vice President Nix. Discussion? Any discussion?
I was surprised, but I would vote people who want Holy Thursday.
Well, that
The
was
18th.
that was the
It
request
wasn't,
of the, collective.
it was a request of BTA.
Doesn't matter to me, I'm not going anywhere, but I just
All right.
thought.
It's the board's prerogative, it's your calendar.
It's what was requested, I think it would behoove us to go with that request. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the floor to adopt the resolution to change the calendar as recommended by the superintendent and closing school on May 23rd. All those in favor? Raise your hand. Thank you, put them down. And seeing all hands raised, the motion carries unanimously.
Okay, the next item for discussion is the first reading of policy 3210, visitors to school. This policy revision was actually requested by a trustee a few meetings ago. Actually, when we gave everybody bobs to get in. Very simply, the revision will require trustees to report to the main office and announce their presence when they are visiting the school in their official capacity, not if they are there as a parent.
Without objection for the board, since these next three policies are all first reading, we're not taking action tonight, would you mind if the superintendent just discusses them all at the same time?
The next one is first reading of policy 5410, purchasing. Our policy provider has suggested 2 additional policies, procurement of goods and services and alternative formats for instructional materials. Instead of creating 2 additional policies, we've incorporated the 2 recommended policies into our purchasing policy. As a result, take a look at those red line markups. They seem rather extensive, and they fairly are extensive. The revised policy has been reviewed and approved by administration, district council, and the board's strategic planning committee. And again, that is a first reading. The next item, policy 7530, child abuse and maltreatment. This policy revision has been suggested by our policy provider and reflects amendments to Article 23B of the Education Law. That amendment expanded the applicability of provisions requiring reports of child abuse in an educational setting and requiring greater training of covered reporters. As part of the amendments, various definitions were changed and applicable definitions were updated in the policy to reflect the amendments. Again, the policy has been approved by administration, district council, and the board's strategic planning committee. I offer all 3 of these as a first reading.
Does anybody have any questions on the 3 board policies? All right, again, it's first reading, so no action. And we'll have them on the agenda then for April 17th, correct?
Yes, April 17th.
All right.
Moving to curriculum. Okay, so administration recommends approval of curriculum items reflected in schedules G1 and G2.
Okay. Motion needed for G1 and G2. Motion by Vice President Nick, seconded by Ms. Mallon. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, G1 and 2, please raise your hands. Thank you, put them down. Seeing all hands raised.
And
Motion passes unanimously. Was there a question?
I saw the H and I was double checking whether we were on H or G. But
We were on G.
Thank you, yes.
Okay. Now we're on H.
Ta-da.
All right.
Moving to
Yeah, but
personnel.
Still, we can count on it.
Administration recommends
There's
approval.
literacy and nothing before. Sorry, it's getting late.
Just let me know when I can go.
Carry on.
Administration recommends approval of personnel changes reflected in schedules H1 through H7.
Motion. Need a motion. Ms. Mallon, seconded by Dr. Griffin. Discussion. Discussion on the personnel items. Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you, put them down. Seeing all hands raised, the motion H1 through 7 passes unanimously.
And moving on to business items, administration recommends approval of business items reflected in schedules I1 through I8.
Another motion and a second. How about we go this way now? Vice President Nix and Ms. Mallon as a second. How's that? All right, discussion.
More typing from this one.
All right, she's fine.
She's quick. She can.
All right. Any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor of I1 through 8, please raise your hands. Thank you very much. Please put them down. See your hands raised. The motion passes unanimously. That brings us to public commentary. Any cards? No cards. So we will suspend the reading of the guide to the board meeting.
Say again? Yeah, Jarrell made first team all Long Island. I thought they did a Long Island Player of the Year, which I think he would be in the running for, but they didn't.
In his report.
Yeah, but yeah, so Jarrell White, all Long Island first team in basketball.
Is that your report, or do you want to wait for the...
No, you can go. I don't think I have anything. But go ahead. Thought that Johnny asked me.
I know, he did.
Yeah,
so
I was out of order.
Okay. Shall we?
And he was just reprimanding you.
Yeah, It's okay.
I
Ms.
just wanted to
Dialosa.
congratulate Mr. Nix on his new position. I'm very excited for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Santa.
I'm going to apologize to you in our lapse in Robert's Rules of Order tonight, but I'm doing my own PSA today. Since it happens to be
the time in which some civic-minded individuals are considering board service, I will offer a little bit of my experience and also my knowledge in reference to the New York State School Board Association training. So if anyone who is running, an advanced look at this might be a good idea, and I have spare copies. It's the New School Board Member Handbook, and it's called A Guide to Surviving Your First Year. And I don't like the word surviving because it's really not that dire. It's just a matter of attaining some of the knowledge and getting a taste of what to be prepared for. So if anyone does want a copy of that, I have extra copies. And I think it's important reading because sometimes, I can put it this way, it's an awesome responsibility to be a school board volunteer. And some of us have some advanced background knowledge, like Dr. Griffin and Miss Mallon and I, having been educators, we understand at least the alphabet soup of IEP and CSE and APPR, which can be a little bit overwhelming. The other thing I offer for you to know, if you do become a new school board member, or if you might want to take a look at this, our district clerk has available this handy-dandy guide to school law. And it's somewhat large, I'll leave it at that, but it's very well organized in terms of if you really have any questions, a lot of the answers are here. And of course, once you do serve on the board, we utilize certainly the services of our wonderful law firm. So this is another great resource if you are so interested. If you have a question, chances are there's some type of answer in here. And it's really just an abridged copy of all the different levels of law that a school board must operate under. So it's New York State education law, regulations and decisions of the Commission of Education, it's other laws, it's legal opinions relating to education and guidance of the school board, and in addition, and if anybody is involved in any type of organization, we have unions, there's that as well. So sometimes people in the general public get a little frustrated with us. Well, why can't you just? And often we can't just because of this, or I'm going to blame our Gersu and Gersu, we can't do it because of them. But that's not as an excuse, it's just as a teacher to try to get people to understand that there's a little bit more to it. So it's always best, again, being a teacher, I always like to share what I have, so if anyone would ever want to call me up, my phone number is on the calendar. And again, I have this as a takeaway if anybody were interested. And I hope people are, because as a social studies teacher for many years, we used to call it citizenship education. And one of my favorite things is teaching participation in government. And your school board is your most local level of government. It doesn't get any more direct than that. Not only are we meeting our fiduciary responsibility to all the taxpayers in the community, which is very important, but oh my goodness, parents entrust their children to us. And all the policy and the procedure that we do create and the people that we hire are all because of that trust that the public puts in us. And I think it really is an awesome responsibility. And I think it's actually a privilege to serve. So if anyone's interested in any information, I'd be happy to share what I have. So thank you.
Okay. Mr. Pacini?
Yeah, I do have a quick question, and forgive me, I know we briefly touched on this topic a few meetings ago, and I missed the last meeting, but I've had a couple of inquiries from some community members wanting to know if we're gonna announce what we're gonna do with Ms. Hunt's open seat. And I know we discussed it as a board because we needed legal counsel's advice on the resignation of Mrs. Hunt and the residency and all those things. But I don't know, unless I missed it, it was last week, did we have a discussion on and make a comment publicly on what our plans are? Because I'm still a little unclear if we discussed it or not.
You want to speak to it? You want me to speak to it?
You want to say so? I mean,
We adopted,
got-
we adopted a resolution last meeting to hold the position open until the next election because under advice of council, we were given 3 different scenarios. The board could appoint right away, but then that person would have to run again for re-election come May and for the balance of Ms. Hunt's term. Or we could have, well, there are 2 scenarios.
2 appointments.
Two scenarios. And so in leaving it open, because in pointing now, they'd have to run again and be elected in May. And so. we'll
So
leave
if
it
they were
open. That
appointed to
person-
Ms. Hunt's seat, they wouldn't fulfill the term of Ms. Hunt's seat. I must have missed that when we discussed it. They would have to rerun.
That's
It would only-
correct.
Is that accurate? Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Till the next regular election.
Yeah, that's if it's by appointment.
So if they didn't survive the election, they would be out on May 22nd,
Sure, okay.
okay? And then the winner of the election would be seated on May 22nd. So we decided to leave it open
Mm-hmm.
until the next election. We also have 3 full-term seats up this cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So there'll actually be 4 seats running. And the 3 top vote getters would earn the 3 seats.
Sure, no, I get that piece,
And
yeah.
be seated in July, but then the 4th vote getter would be seated immediately.
Yeah, no, that part, yeah, that- until they
fulfill
get,
the term.
to fulfill the term.
And then for the balance of the.
Yeah,
2
that
years.
part I remembered.
Yes.
In thinking about it, the person who really gets shafted here is Mrs. DeSanto. Because your term ends, you have one
Next
more
year,
year left.
yeah.
But you are the next highest vote getter, and I know it's not doing that, but
It's okay.
it's just seemed like,
I'm
to
a
me,
big
like.
girl.
Well, that was
I'm
the,
used to
uh,
being at the end of the table, so.
No, listen, I get it, but somebody who's gonna come in and.
Law sometimes is unusual.
No, I get it, it's fine, I just didn't know, and not being here,
Yeah.
and didn't see it on the
Well,
agenda
that was
last
a
week. wanted
byproduct
to
of
understand.
reducing the board from 9 to 7.
Yeah, we're doing
The
with
2
multiple
No,
things.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but my point is, because last year's seats, whoever got, the length of term was determined by the number of votes. So, Ms. DeSanto being 3rd has a 2-year term, somebody coming in, you know, could be last again and only get 2 years. I just think it didn't work out equitably for Ms. DeSanto. Ms. DeSanto doesn't have a problem, I'm not her attorney, so that's fine.
I'm used to.
It
I'm
was
used to
something
the
that came
law.
to me this week, and I wanted to make sure that, and I did not remember the piece that they would have to, if they were appointed, they'd have to run. So that's the part that I didn't understand, so thank you for
All
clarifying.
right, you're very welcome.
It's my great cloud.
Okay,
No comment.
no comment?
Just that Kramer Street Elementary School is having their sensory night on Thursday, April 4th at 5:30. I went last year, it was a really beautiful program, and I look forward to going again.
All right, so in closing, just want to remind the public out there who is considering running for the Board of Education, the law book is bought for each member who becomes elected, and also it is board policy that you attend the New York State School Board Association training within the first year of your term. And second, I would like to just thank the Board of Education for their endurance for this lengthy meeting. I think it's very important to have a diverse makeup of this board that most importantly includes teachers, but also doesn't include teachers and includes people who come from civil service, from retail, all walks of life, so that we have an adequate representation here at this board. And I think this board serves to prove that point, that we do have a very diverse and a very willing board to cooperate with one another. So I thank you for those who came tonight and sat through the lengthy presentations, and I thank those who are watching out on our live stream for enduring the meeting as well. And we will see you again at our workshop on April 3rd. And again, the budget will be adopted on April 17th here in this room, 7:30 start for the public for both of those meetings. Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to
Point
adjourn?
of clarification, if I could. I wasn't endorsing only teachers. I'm saying we have an unfair advantage because we understand the lingo. That's all.
We're all here to, well, and that's why we
That's
asked for the list of acronyms and we study them throughout the year.
I know
Okay?
it's a hard thing to do, and I applaud anyone who does study it like you do,
Thank you.
Madam President.
Motion to adjourn. Motion by Dr. Griffin, seconded by Vice President Nix. All those in favor of adjournment?